Good morning, Wang Jing.
Hello, good morning to you.
I know Neil said I don't know if Neil can or can't come, but I think he says regrets, so I guess not. And Eric also says flying.
Not, yeah, I saw Eric as well.
I don't
Um,
understand my Discord app. It's set to notifications all, but I only see all when I go to Discord. Maybe it's my phone.
let's see.
And I'm not sure why Carly posted in the same channel about the bite-sized trust videos about income.
Oh, she was thinking about a while ago, um, ask us to prepare a bite-sized trust video on the topic of DICOM versus TSP.
This wouldn't be the right working group, would it?
Yeah, it wouldn't be. Maybe because I mentioned it earlier
Yeah.
when Drummond was saying, I made a comment like, hey, looks like this is a DICOM versus TSP topic again.
I mean, you'd end up doing it anyway, but you'd be doing it under the TSP group, not AIM.
Probably, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's really a question whether we want to do it because um, earlier I thought it was doing this topic because um, there was at least a part of the um, thought that we could work together in some way, like Neil was saying, merging. In that case, I think it would be very beneficial to kind of understand the differences, the commonalities, and then collectively we can work on how to, using that phrase, merge them together. The proposal I put forward was to preserve DICOM messages. The DICOM's really several components combined together. And in our terminology, we separate them into different layers. But in DICOM, they are closely tied. Um, it's like, I guess like a TCP and IP, but you make them into a single protocol, right? We thought it would be better to separate them, and in that analogy, the DICOM would be TCP, and then TSP will be like IP. So that's the one hypothetical or conceptual merging that could be done, but that conversation didn't get I think a clear yes. So there was some interest, but um, it didn't move forward. And so at this point, we could talk about the differences, and but there is no follow-up. Like, okay, those two are different in such and such a way, then what, right? Without knowing then what is a kind of a difficult to frame this particular discussion.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's a bit on the edge. I don't
Hmm.
know. Do we have to really be addressing that? Is that
Well,
a
not in this call, not necessary, definitely not.
no, not this call, but even the TSP call?
Exactly. We don't necessarily have
Tangent,
because
isn't it? Tangential, as they say.
yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. And hey, Drummond, you can
Yeah, how,
jump in there. We're just chatting along.
yeah, no, all good. I'm back, from Europe, and but waking up very early in the morning, and therefore sort of hitting a sleep wall about now. I was just realizing it's like, I think I've done 4 hours of calls. And I'm like,
Oh
oh,
my,
okay.
oh my.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
it's
if
typical
you get
Thursday.
up early, there are many calls.
Oh, I know. It's like, yeah, you can go on to a whole bunch more calls. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's
Um,
time for a nap.
well, I might, you know, I might take you up on that. Now Nikki is here, so you have some real, you know, real expertise joining the call. I'm just, you know, I'm here
I
here
think the
to
whole point of
listen,
this
learn.
call is none of us are experts.
Yes, we are all learning together.
Just as a sidebar, Nikki, you're gonna get a message from someone about the symposium about putting a slide in for Yoma. For the
That
Yes,
review.
someone was
Drummond's texted
someone
me.
was me. Yes.
There
Yeah.
you go. Heads up.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All good. So, yeah, given that I am, I think, going to hit that sleep wall here, is there anything on the agenda today that either I can help with, or that I'm going, oh my gosh, if I don't stay on this call and stay awake, I'm going to miss, you know, the
Well,
essence.
yeah, one question, we, you know, since last, or in the last two calls, we're mainly discussing um, sort of a high-level framework, how we think about agent trust, right? How do we trust AI agent? And one school of thought on that seems will be either, I think your term would be micro sharing or very fine-grained control over what to share, which piece, when to share it, right? I think Neil was talking about the same thing too. Essentially, that will be data sharing in this new context, but in more fine-grained control. So you can more specifically say which piece of data to share. That's my sort of I'm sure I'm, you know, butchering it, but would you be able to frame it better or describing what that micro sharing idea, what is, you know, what that come down to?
Well, if you're asking me, I would actually characterize that's primarily, Neil has been the you know, primary evangelist for micro sharing, which I think is a, you know, it sounds like a generally good practice. I'm I'm I'll put it this way: I'm not persuaded that is going to address the deeper trust issues with personal data and personal AI agents. Because I do think, as Neil says, you're going to have to share. You know, it's almost like the more value you want, the more, in many cases, you'll have to share.
Right.
Which is ironic, as you know, I'm working on the first person project, which is all about how for certain kinds of interactions, you don't have to, you know, a zero knowledge proof will be sufficient, and that's much more privacy preserving and can, um, uh, solve a bunch of problems and help. But more and more, as we talk about the decentralized trust graph, it's really a foundational piece. It's like saying, yeah, a floor is valuable, but if you don't actually, like, you know, put some furniture in the room and add some lighting to the room and add a, you know, a TV or a stereo or a bed or whatever, you're not really, you know, you're not getting anywhere near the full value of the room. So the floor is essential, but it's the floor of value, not the ceiling of value. And so one thing that's emerging is that the more there are a number of advantages to using, yeah, as you know, we need to standardize at least a variant of ZKP against, you know, for use in order to get that floor and the privacy preserving benefits of that floor. But more and more, it's looking like, well, actually, credentials issued that, you know, that take advantage of the properties that ZKP give you not just on linkability, but selective disclosure over all the things in those credentials, and the ability to produce succinct proofs against combinations of credentials. That's always been true. That's true in the non-creds today. And so there's just a lot of general value there that again is built on top of that trust graph. Now, where I'm going with this is to say, if you're going to share, I think the bigger issues are ones of establishing trust relationships and governance over what's going to happen with that data when it is shared. So I'm not saying that micro-sharing is not, it's generally data minimization is always a good idea. But it feels to me like the larger issues are agreements and governance that the agents can negotiate and enter into, right, about what is data going to be used for. Because the richer, I'm seeing examples of what are we going to use personal AI agents for? And if it is, sensitive personal healthcare issues, right, financial advice, relationship advice, right? The data you need to share to get that value is very rich, very deep, very sensitive, and micro sharing is not going to help you in those cases. Yeah, travel use cases, things like that. But I think in those use cases, it's much more important what's your actual the legal relationship and duties of the AI agent that you're using and the AI agents you're interacting with. And that's probably the whole, you woke me up again, Wenjing.
Okay. Okay. So, I just want to make sure I displayed on the note. So we need to give the antitrust notice and also the IPR notice here. Then we can continue. The line of thought on micro sharing and ZKP are similar, minimize sharing when you could, right? But I think would it be fair to say that yes, do that, but it doesn't address the main problem, which is in order to collaborate with something, you will have to share quite a lot, even if you minimize it, theoretically minimize to the maximum. Sorry, that's the wrong phrase. You minimize the sharing, but that's still maybe even still is not strong enough. It is always going to be a lot. And sort of withholding my name and all that is kind of a quaint because let's say you have like you were mentioning, not just traveling, but financial advisors or health advisors. How could you possibly be anonymous? It's not possible, right? In a practical sense, you will be sharing so much that of course they can identify you. Would that be fair to say?
That
Oh,
would
yeah.
be fair to say.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
It's
and I,
all controlled in governance.
yeah, and I don't think it's just identifiability. It gets down to the
Yeah.
sensitivity of the information you're sharing. I mean, when we're talking about health data, that's really, yeah, of course. Well, I guess there's sometimes where you could, yeah, you want to submit certain data to, perhaps some kind of a screening or testing where you don't want to be identified
Yeah.
until it's until it's like, oh, I've got that particular disease or condition. I need to be treated. Well, no, yeah, exactly. But
Yeah. So,
the
so
depth,
maybe there are like very specific things you want to do ZKP, do something, maybe, but that seems to be like a relatively smaller portion of the information. Majority of information you were likely to be, um, you're going to be massively sharing.
and it's, I want to argue it's the more I'm, looking at the use of AI agents, the more I think, ironically, it's going to be like interactions in the real world, right? It's pretty
Yeah.
hard for me to, have a face-to-face interaction. Yes, I can do it without, revealing my name or legal identity or anything else, but the folks I'm interacting with are going to know who You know, in that context, they're going to know me quite well. I can't hide that way. But if I want to have the interaction, if I want to have the benefit of the interaction, I'm going to have to do that. And I think we'll have a similar situation with agent to agent interactions in a lot of cases.
Yeah, yeah. In sort of less personal interaction, like people tend to, like for instance, um, what our classic example of buying a beer, and the bartender want to check your ID, etc. Well, if you know the bartender a lot, you go there often, then I think it's kind of moot. That's only the ZKP is only useful if you are a stranger in that bar and you only go there once, right?
Yes, that's a good, that's a very good social example. The more you interact, the more
If
yeah,
you know,
the more you share.
if your bartender is kind of your psychiatrist already, then of course they know everything.
Oh, I love this. AI bartenders. How soon are we going to
Yeah,
get those?
yeah. Okay, maybe Nikki first, then Steven.
Yeah, I put a link in the chat. So this really reminds me of something we've been thinking about and working on for a number of years, which is contextual permissioning. And Drummond, you contributed to this discussion document about smart permissions. And Dan, it was around the time we were doing the guardianship work. And Daniel Hardman actually created a markup language for what he called smart permissions. And we demoed it using verifiable credentials and everything as part of our work on guardianship. So, I mean, look at that document. It's based on stuff I literally did, nearly 30 years ago. I attended an academic conference about contextual permissioning. You know, it's the factors that you take into account are, who are you doing business with? What's the purpose of the transaction? What's the kind of temporal and social context? So there might be something in that that's worth, as a starting point for the thinking, because as we go through these many discussions, the problems remain the same, whether it's a machine actor or a human actor. And to a certain extent, the solutions are common. And, we were talking about the whole question about data sharing and so forth. So there's some extent to which we all need to share our data in quite an expansive way in order to fuel the language models and so forth and make the AI intelligent. But then when it comes to my personal data, so that creates the models and generates synthetic data sets upon which you can test and train and all that kind of thing. But when it comes to my personal data, I think, we should go to our decentralized models and think about the compute at the edge. So you're not sharing your data and giving them permission to access your data. You're they're giving you permission to run their model on your data. Or you've got privacy enhancing technologies like fully homomorphic encryption or others that act on the edge or in constrained, highly secure environments with, uh, still not centralized. No, it shouldn't be you always share all your data, otherwise you don't get the service. That's the kind of highway robber tactics of the platforms. And with AI, we've got an opportunity to break up those data sharing points and as Drummond says, really go for consent to purpose. as opposed to consent to data sharing. So that was a bit of a rant. Sorry, guys.
No problem. Stephen?
Yeah, so I guess along the same line of consent to purpose, I'm not an ACDC expert, but I do know, or I do recall Sam discussing like selective disclosure. I do understand from my time with the Human Colossus guys that you're able to create a permission list. So I'll share this data with this doctor for this purpose. If they want to share it with someone else, it has to come back to me because they would not be on, let's say, a permission list. I mean, you could copy paste, of course, but as far as sharing data goes, it would have to come back to you to say, okay, I did it in a study. Now I'm willing to share it with my physician because there's a cure for it now, or it's going to help in a cure. But either way, it wouldn't be just out in, oh, I gave out my data and God knows what happened to it now. It would still be part of this permission chain, if I understand correctly.
And Jim?
Yeah, sorry, I got caught on an email there. But I just threw it in the chat too. I know we spent a lot of time around consent to share and sharing data and the mechanisms for data sharing. But when we're talking multi-agentic, or even just in a one-on-one relationship with a dedicated large language model, there's just identity and access management as a starting point. And Nikki captured it very well about compute on the edge, where just having agents acting on your behalf who can identify that they're on behalf of, which is what we're kicking around in diff right now, and that translates into a policy-based access control model or some sort of dynamic access control allocation is the table stakes before you get to the next level in the transaction stack to be able to say, and here's the data I have, or I'm willing to share this data with you.
Right, there's a portion always needed that's like more for security. Um, so, the agent and the person need to know each other, make sure it's the right person, and that doesn't change. Once that's established, then you, like we were discussing, you want to minimize data sharing in at least some cases. I would argue those are kind of a small corner cases rather than the norm. In most common case, you are really now withholding at least all the relevant information, right? Which is a lot. And so purely when that sharing happens, even if we implement perfectly what we could, um, seems like it does not address the main problem. We will be sharing a lot on the protocol level. Maybe governance would come in and say, well, you must, forget, you must delete and forget about what I told you about, something like that. But it seems like it has to go beyond in the lower layer, talking about, if I need to um, buy a travel ticket and I'm sharing a bunch of information with you in order to do that. And then what? It's going to be a lot of information, no matter what we do with it. And there's a lot of push because we want that to be magical, good experience. That's the whole point, right? So we will be sharing a lot.
100% agree. And it's just, yeah, that was my point is it won't be
And
enough to just do data minimization.
right, okay. And so it seems to me the majority of the problem is going to be then what?
Yep.
I have one example. I haven't read too much yet, but I will volunteer to read it more and maybe share with you next week or the after. There was a news report about the FDA considering this is the what do they call the advisor or the expert group in the FDA. Usually they do technical evaluation and then they propose, yes or no to some drug or some processes, etc., right, in medicine. So the report says they are considering to regulate AI chatbots as a medical device when they are giving the contest is giving psychological counseling.
Whoa. To regulate them as a medical device.
Yes.
Whoa.
Now that has a lot of there's a lot of implications on what this is going to be.
No kidding. Wow.
Yes. Yes.
That's hmm.
Well, and the FDA in general is playing a lot of, just the reality, they're playing a lot of catch up with regards to AI. And when I was
Yeah.
doing an AI risks document in healthcare a couple of years ago, I was working with FDA as a contributor. And they basically said, well, everything we do is covered under software as a medical device, and that's adequate. And I'm like, and this was pre LLM and pre generative AI. I'm like, I don't quite think that's, what we're thinking here. And then generative AI came on the scene too fast for them, and now they're trying to catch up as to what it means.
Yeah. Because that would be going down one particular direction. I don't know if that's the right
Yeah.
one, but
Yeah, and to tie this all together, I mean, I had the responsible generative AI framework working group meeting with LFAI and data this morning. And we were talking about harmonization with the new ISO 42000 series and a conference they're going to in Singapore. Singapore has its own AI Verify Foundation, which has its own tools for 42000 and one verification, as well as the NIST framework. Cloud Security Alliance does. So even though I've gotten some disagreement as to whether now was the time for harmonization, that may be a starting point for us, which also then aligns to what LFAI and data is doing.
yeah. So interestingly, the subgroup, counselors and psychologists seem to favor the use of chatbots specifically trained for being a psychologist in some way or counselors in some way. And they did some clinical trial as well as sort of all pointing to very positively. And uh, now in that context, we can talk about data sharing. If it's a device, then you're not sharing with the device, you're sharing with whoever operates it, I guess, or whoever owns it.
Yeah, that's true. And you're right. It looks like it could be a very significant improvement because tuned chatbots provide really kind of three things. Number one, a platform at 2 a.m. when somebody's having an episode and needs to be able to talk to a counselor or counseling services immediately. Number two, be able to, by capturing their data, provide a longitudinal output back to the real human counselor. So the counselor is kept up to date synchronously and asynchronously. And number three, quite frankly, is there's a lot of times that people are seeking. I've read some various stories about this so far. There's a lot of people out there right now who are going to therapists all the time because they want to
Yeah.
listen to somebody tell them they're right or that their beliefs are correct. And a neutral-based chatbot responding to frameworks clinically isn't necessarily going to do that. It's there to walk you through problems. But if it's just, I don't understand why everybody votes for Trump, it's not going to nod its head and say, yeah, I know what you mean. Um, so that's some of the advantages that they're considering for chatbot driven models.
Wow.
Um,
Health I just want to say healthcare gives us such a clean well, I mean clean, hard set of problems that it just puts everything into, because the value of the agents and the privacy issues and data control issues of the agents are just in such stark relief.
yeah.
So yeah, that's all I want to say. Go ahead.
So I guess the question I want to put forward for us is that maybe this will be at least a one model to consider. If we follow, FDA expert groups direction at the moment, anyway. It's early days, and we don't know whether that will go down actually. But that would be one way to sort of frame the whole problem, that we are talking to a device, and it's the humans, different type of humans behind it, will be responsible for keeping the information safe. And in this context, we can then think about solutions. I'm trying to see if that is a maybe among 1, 2, 3 different approaches, could it be one of them?
Yep, I'm on board with that.
So in that in that direction, we could then sort of identify, what these agents are, who are people behind it, and maybe think about a governance technical solution that is going to fit into that framework. Um, would that be worthwhile doing, I guess?
Short answer, yes. Now that you've framed the problem that way, it intersects with great discussion. While you were there at the that session that we had on first person credentials and agents at agent agentic internet workshop, and then I had a deeper dive, a chance to discuss a deeper dive at the Affinity workshop we had in Berlin last week.
Yeah.
And I think, Wenjing, what you're suggesting is if the essence of that, that diagram I showed from Glenn Gord and the team at Affinity, but which is fairly easy to understand, which is if the AI agents with which we're interacting, either on our behalf or or on the other side of that dialogue, if they all have verifiable identity and or identifiers, I should be precise, right? If, in other words, if they have all the things we get with a TSP connection, and they can, they've been issued credentials that, and or it's almost 3 stages: verifiable identifiers, credentials to establish trust, and then that third layer is I'm just going to call it negotiated agreement as to what the agents can perform and what basically the guardrails or the governance that applies. And the interesting thing is, if we use the analogy again, right straight to healthcare, all the interactions in the U.S. healthcare system have a whole set of regulations around them, right?
Yes.
So it's not like we have to reinvent any of that. What we have to do is document that these, just as they're proposing, well, we're going to regulate those as medical devices. Well, they're not really. It's much more like regulate them as practitioners, right? If they're proxying or anyway, I'm just pointing out that if you have the first 2 layers, the TSP and trust has that for verifiable credential exchange, you set up this negotiation or agreement layer,
Yes.
and then we get to that much more powerful thing we're talking about. Then you're not worrying about minimizing data because you're covering, just like talking to a doctor, right?
Yeah.
You don't worry about telling your doctor.
Yeah, that the doctor-patient relationship has a lot of laws already written into it. And you probably sign some kind of agreement when you sign up as a patient, et cetera, et cetera. This is all covered, and you are
Exactly.
simply enforcing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's covered, but that doesn't mean, and this is something that I've belonged to several groups have done, that there aren't gradients of consent. My podiatrist doesn't necessarily need to know about my behavioral health problems. Or I don't want to reveal my homeless status to my cardiologist or something along those lines. A granular consent concept for data sharing that's still kind of being kicked around, but isn't it's not an easy answer because the more granular you make your consent, the more somebody has to be involved. It's just like, accepting all cookies every time you go to a website. And if I have a 72-year-old dual eligible Medicare, Medicaid recipient, I don't want to give them a hard problem to solve as to, are you willing to share this or not? Because they'll just default to yes.
I see. So, for example, if your family doctor, for some reason, want to ask about your conversation with your counselor, then the counselor need to, or you need to consent to that, and they don't
Correct.
automatically get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But again, I think what I'm being covered is that there is a framework that describe this, and maybe a lot of solutions are missing, but we can within that framework work out solutions.
That is
Yeah.
exactly what we were tossing around in some other groups. You're exactly right.
Right.
I was going to say, Wenjing, in your talk about, next Wednesday on TSP and TMCP and TA2A, if you have room or time at the end of that to talk about, hey, on top of this layer, TSP doesn't solve those problems, but it gives you the foundation to then do the higher level trust tasks, including that agreement on the context, the applicable, essentially restrictions that you're going to negotiate or agree to. Yeah, it sort of feels like, yeah, that's the overall framework that we need
Because
to
some are
advocate.
sort of a legal compliance, which is, basically agreement that's, written in law already. And so those in some way. And
Yes.
then it requires individually, like when you become a patient to a particular doctor, you may need to sign a piece of paper, and that will be bilateral agreements. So if we think about this way, at least there's a I think I borrow that word, coherent structure to think about this problem. May not be the optimal, but at least one way of thinking about this problem. And potentially we can come up with justifiable solutions like, hey, to solve that piece of problem, we could do this, etc. There's a approach that's coherent that we can move forward with.
Yep. That sounds really good.
Should we sort of I guess put this as like a candidate A, or at least a one choice that we could go think about this.
In terms of like developing the framework,
Well, in terms of like how do we organize our work going forward, right?
yes.
We could be exploring in all different ways for a while. I think that would be a good idea too. And we could then pick a few of the approach. This one seems like that we put enough time to it, that we could come up with a quite clearly defined and coherent structure, and then potentially pick a few of the really important problem to work on and have productive outcomes as well.
I'm totally 100% on board. Yeah, I have one interesting question, which is that that framework, especially if we put it in the context of the trust over IP stack and what we're doing there, it's so I don't know, I personally feel it's so clear and compelling. There's an interesting contrast with what the DIF trusted AI agents working group is doing. I think I posted a link to their recent use cases summary on the GitHub, and I was looking at it when I was on my trip, and I was like, wow, those are it's like it's almost like those are the use cases, and this is the framework. And so I'm constantly wondering how we're going to collaborate with them so we get sort of the maximum bang for the buck. Not that anyone needs to answer that question. I was just just pointing out that it's almost like we're creating the answers to the questions that they're raising there. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And there's also risk that there's multiple groups creating multiple answers too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just reflecting on the conversation, would it be fair to say that your assertion of your terms, policies in place around data use must go alongside the data and the access control? So we're not just opening up a channel for data sharing. It's on these conditions, and we're putting those in the flow. And we previously discussed putting those in specifications, in standards, how you include the policy in the flow, and ultimately compare policies and do that negotiation that you were talking about, Drummond.
Brilliant. I'm sitting here listening to that going, why
Yes.
wasn't that obvious to me? And the answer is because I'm about to fall asleep. This is what happens to your brain when you take too many long flights. It's like, yes, of course, it's the policy piece.
So it's just you have the handshake, and then you hand over like the terms of engagement kind of thing. It's a kind of light touch contracting, I suppose. And that's where my terms comes in, obviously, but it's it all kind of comes back to machine readable and machine enforceable governance. It's all very well writing the roles, the rules and signing the contracts, but how is that operationalized in the system? And
Yes.
we have to take a further step back from that and consider what that means for technical standards.
Right.
What's fascinating is if you think about my terms and what it's really sort of designed to address, and then you turn around and say, okay, well now it's it's essentially a patient-doctor relationship, or a healthcare situation. It's like, oh, didn't think the my terms folks never, that's like thought about the policy involved there. Not that it couldn't be adapted to do that, but it's just, it feels like a much much deeper than the my terms, the current options that I've heard, from customer comments.
Yeah, so my terms is just one example of the type of policy you might assert as an individual in
Right.
assigned with this, but this happens all the time in systems. If you think about payments, conditions around payment, and like the level of authentication you need to provide in different contexts, it's partly the bank's policy or the card issuer's policy, and it's partly the policy of the marketplace or the vendor. And I'm not sure you were in the discussion when we talked about it kind of, I call it loosely interoperable governance. So
It's
and how can you use AI for that? So there is some thinking that we're doing in different projects about how this fits alongside orchestration and brokerage, which also happen in that thin layer. Especially if you've got more than P2P. And ultimately, you've always got, as I think you pointed out, you've always got a human or an organization behind the agent. So there are, if you like, four party, but they're not in the actors parties actions model. They're not parties. You've got two parties and two actors in each transaction when it comes to AI agents. But of course, you might well have multiple AI agents who've got multiple different types of relationships with different parties, organizations, or people. So I think that's perhaps where the complexity comes in.
Is my term there's a definition or reference to it and a link to it?
Yeah, it's an IEEE standard.
I see.
Let me see if I can find the.
Oh, 7012.
Yeah, got it. Yeah,
Okay.
I just I did have a link to it. Yeah, it's my terms is a marketing term for that. I don't know if the standard itself, you might know better, Nikki, whether it actually references. It's like, Wi-Fi as a marketing term refers to some numerical standard. So we're all just calling my terms because it's a lot easier than IEEE 7012. Which, by the way, has not been published yet. You can go to that page, but it's in the, they said at IAW, it's in the final, it's received apparently the final approval and will be out sometime in January. That's how slow those versus a small, nimble, agile, super fast.
But you know, essentially every identity system has a terms and conditions service. And it's it's a database normally where you change when every time you change the terms and conditions, everyone's got to agree to them.
Yeah.
And so you manage you know, it's a like every system I've worked with has got a T's and C's service. And this is the T's and C's service on the customer side. So the customer says, before you access my data, this is my privacy policy. This is what
Yeah.
you can and can't do. So it's part of rebalancing power in markets, and it's the brainchild of Doc and Customer Commons. So, I think we're rapidly moving towards multi-sided markets, and that's the way of the decentralized world. Everyone's got their terms and conditions. If you think about supply chains, everyone's
Right.
got their codes of practice, terms and conditions, and so forth. And we need to enable interop on that. And I think AI can help us quite a lot with it. But you do need this essential new component of negotiation.
I put in my hand because I profoundly agree with Nikki, and it's actually in discussion with Andor. There's been a lot of talk about agents that a specialized agent for that purpose. Sometimes they're called policy agents. I like the term guardian agents when it comes to people. And so I think it would be very interesting for this group to look at, as we develop that framework, is there a role for specialized AI agents, to function as guardian agents? And when you think about that, it's not just policy negotiation, but it's also, if you think about a guardian agent that is a quote, Nikki will love this, fourth party, right?
The
That's
fourth party.
yeah. No, that's another Doc Searle's term, right? You've got first party and second party. Third parties are almost always on the side of the second party, right? The seller is using some third party to ship you something or do something. So Doc introduced the term of, well, who's the third party on your side? And that's the fourth party. So by your side, meaning the individual or consumer
I
side.
think a while ago there was I forgot who did it, but that parties and roles definition. Would it be a good idea to read it or expand that to introduce, I don't know, the fourth and the fifth parties?
Since you just asked that question, I'm sitting here saying, I'm looking right now at the fourth party. Did we define it in the trust of yes, we did.
We did have fourth party defined. Okay.
I'm so tickled about the fact. I mean, we got a lot about this too, but there it is in the trust RFP guard
Yeah.
definition right
Oh, I
there.
see.
And I think we also need to consider, so this is about the parties, which can be organizations or human beings. And then there's also actors, which can be machines or human beings. Another thing I just want to add into this discussion, which I'm loving, is ultimately it's all about making decisions and what that leads to in terms of actions and behavior on the part of the humans and the agents and the organizations and everything like that. And for that reason, I think when you look at AI value chains and think about the markets, it's decision support systems that are the really crux of the matter with their recommendations and their there's a lot in healthcare. There's a lot in emerging in financial services. There's already quite a vibrant market in decision support. And therefore, I think there's an importance about signals and metrics. So a risk score when you make that decision, okay? And that's something you can do with credentials and particularly with relationship credentials. And I hope it's something that could come out of the risk graph. So ultimately, a human makes a decision for themselves or on behalf of an organization. And the explainability of the AI, how they came to those recommendations, and the kind of trust score or risk score that's based on that contextual permissioning. Is it a new relationship? How many relationships has that entity got? Are we connected in some kind of network? There's loads of cool maths you can do basically on that contextual risk score that is an indicator and supports that decision. So it's like an ambient signal in the user interface. But it starts with metrics. I mean, Drummond knows I love my metrics. But ultimately what it means is there's a load of security, privacy, governance stuff going on under the covers. We're not going to explain that to now. You want to get stuff done. You need some help. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, or you need to book a good holiday and keep the kids happy. So ambient indicators of be cautious here, maybe ask a few different questions, or good to go. This is a strong relationship, in TSP terms, or it's a really trusted authority that's widely used. Those sorts of things just make human in the loop more of a game changer and improve the trustworthiness. So I'd love to see this group thinking about what those trust metrics, I call them, for those kind of indicators could be, if you were to roll up all of the security, privacy, kind of cryptography that's going on under the covers, and make it sensible for mere mortals like me.
Good.
So that's what our guardian agents will do.
The
Yeah,
guardian agents.
I love it. And I'm just going to hire Nikki to be my guardian agent. I'm done. Perfect.
Also,
seriously.
like the decision support system, because in a way we are as an individual, we are actually very overwhelmed with all the decisions we have to make, without the AI, and if this becomes a norm, then there will be a lot of decisioning to be made, and I think this is where maybe AI becomes a positive force for us.
100%. I mean, we're saying this now, and I noted it in I think one paragraph of the first person white paper, but my spidey sense is telling me it's going to be huge. We're already overwhelmed with those decisions, and we're professionals in this area, right? The poor,
Yeah.
unwashed masses are just, pigs to the slaughter unless we start having guardian agents, and they start relying on their guardian agents, and those guardian agents actually are, from a fourth party, helping represent them, man, all kinds of things become possible. So anyway, I thank all of you for waking me up now, and I should probably go get my nap, or else I will melt down later today.
All right. So maybe the last 2 minutes, we next week I think is the symposium. So I would right? I
Yep.
think yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Would
Wednesday and Thursday. We just had a whole call about it.
yeah. So we would let's cancel next week, and then how about in 2 weeks we come back and actually starting to join, maybe sharing some of the diagrams and that cover what we talked about today. I'm going to copy your.
Yeah, one issue with that we just discovered on the other one too. 2 weeks from today is U.S. Thanksgiving.
Oh boy, gosh, so that means the 3 weeks now.
I
Yeah,
know.
3 weeks. Maybe instead of talking about it, we should all come back, done our homework, with with your family parties, and
Yep.
sure, well, we can actually plan some work in 3 weeks. How's that?
That's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be good. I'm not planning. Well, I might have one trip in December, but not international for certain, just local. I might be down in your neck of the woods again, Wenjing. So, sounds good. But yeah, next week symposium, week after Turkey Day.
Yeah, symposium, and then if that's Thanksgiving, so we are going to be talking about December 4th.
Yep. We should all be supercharged by then.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what we should all use caffeine.ai to design our personal guardian agents and have them all start talking to each other.
Yeah.
I propose a Christmas special where we all use our own AI tools. We can do whatever we like, create a little video, a deep fake, a little AI agent, a diagram, to do something festive and funny for our last meeting before Christmas.
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
Like it.
Excellent. Yep. I was only half kidding about caffeine AI. I was at a workshop last week in Malmö, Sweden, where we had 3 hours. The attendees 3 hours to create an app using caffeine. So they don't call it vibe coding; they call it self-writing apps. And
Self-writing.
I know they're trying to get beyond vibe coding. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Anyway, it was impressive at the outset, but I'll just tell you, it even when I found error, all I tried to do, I said, create an example trust registry, and it did a pretty good job of a lot of things. But then it'd make mistakes. I'd say, oh, fix this, and it do 5 minutes worth of work rewriting everything, and it writes a spec before it then writes the code, and come back and the thing's not fixed. And I'm like, oh, this is really a dumb agent. So anyway, just telling you, it's this, it's a fascinating app to play with if you're interested in this space. And you're right, I got to drop too, literally. And so I'll talk to everyone later. Thank you, Wenjing.
All right. Thank you very much. We will see you in December 4th.
Yes, or at the symposium before then.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll see a lot of you at the symposium. Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Exactly. All right.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank
You bet.
you.
Okay, bye guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.